plane that changed everything. What started as a simple Father's Day gift from two adopted children to their dad turned into a discovery that would change their lives forever. But before we get to what they found inside that broken airplane, you need to understand how we got here. Marcus had always been different from other kids. While his classmates collected baseball cards or video games, he spent hours at the local airport, watching planes take off and land. His eyes would light up every time he saw a vintage aircraft, especially the old warplanes from decades past. His sister Emma thought it was weird at first, but she grew to love how passionate her brother became when talking about flight patterns and engine types. The two had been adopted by Robert Shun when Marcus was 8 and Emma was 6. Their biological parents had died in a car accident, leaving them with no other family. Robert, a quiet accountant who had never married, wasn't looking to become a father. But something about these two kids at the adoption center made him change his mind completely. Maybe it was how Marcus protected his little sister, or how Emma's laugh could fill up an entire room. Whatever it was, Robert knew they belonged together. For 15 years, Robert had been the best father anyone could ask for. He worked extra hours to pay for Emma's art supplies and Marcus's flying lessons. He never missed a school play or soccer game. He taught them how to ride bikes, helped with homework, and somehow managed to make their small apartment feel like the biggest home in the world. The kids knew they were lucky, even if money was always tight. So when Father's Day approached and Marcus turned 23 while Emma was 21, they wanted to do something special. Really special. They had both got jobs instead of going to college, saving every penny they could. Marcus worked at a local mechanic shop and Emma waited tables at a busy diner. For 2 years, they had been secretly putting money aside for this moment. Dad's always talking about that Cessna he wanted to restore someday. Marcus said to Emma one evening as they counted their savings. What if we actually found one? Emma raised an eyebrow. With our budget? The only planes we can afford probably can't even fly anymore. That's exactly the point, Marcus grinned. Dad loves fixing things. Remember how excited he got restoring that old motorcycle? A project plane would be perfect. They spent weeks searching online, calling salvage yards, and driving to small airports. Most of the planes they found were either too expensive or too far gone. But then Emma spotted an ad that made her heart skip. 1952 Cessna 170, needs complete restoration, asking $3,000. The plane was located at a small private airfield about 2 hours away. When they called, the owner, an elderly man named Frank, sounded tired. I've been trying to sell her for 3 years, he said. She's been sitting in my hangar since my son passed. He was going to restore her, but his voice trailed off. Marcus and Emma drove out the next Saturday. The hangar was old and dusty, filled with spare parts and tools covered in cobwebs. And there, in the center, sat the most beautiful broken airplane either of them had ever seen. The Cessna's paint was faded and peeling, one wing was dented, and the engine was completely seized. But underneath all that damage, you could see what she used to be. She flew cargo runs during the Korean War, Frank explained, running his weathered hand along the fuselage. My son bought her 20 years ago, had all these plans. He stopped and cleared his throat. Look, I know she doesn't look like much, but she's got good bones. The frame is solid, no major structural damage. Someone with patience could bring her back to life. Emma squeezed Marcus's arm. They both knew their dad was exactly that someone. Frank accepted their offer immediately, and even threw in boxes of spare parts and maintenance manuals. Just promise me someone will take care of her, he said as they signed the papers. She deserves to fly again. Getting the plane back home was an adventure in itself. They had to hire a special transport truck, get permits, and coordinate with local authorities. Robert thought they were both crazy when they told him they were planning a surprise delivery for Father's Day. But he played along, probably assuming they had bought him a new tool set or something practical. Father's Day morning arrived with perfect weather. Robert was drinking coffee in their small backyard when he heard the rumble of a large truck pulling up outside. What in the world? He muttered, walking toward the front of the house. Marcus and Emma were practically bouncing with excitement as the delivery crew began unloading pieces of airplane. Robert's coffee mug slipped from his hands and shattered on the driveway. Happy Father's Day, Dad, Emma shouted. You kids bought me a plane? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. An actual airplane. She needs work, Marcus said quickly. A lot of work. But Frank said she's got good bones, and we know how much you love fixing things. and we thought maybe this could be your big project, and Robert wrapped both his children in the biggest hug of their lives. There were tears in his eyes, and for a moment, he couldn't speak at all. They spent the rest of the day moving airplane parts into the garage Robert had converted into a workshop years earlier. It was cramped, but everything fit. That evening, as they sat around their little kitchen table eating takeout pizza, Robert kept shaking his head in amazement. "I can't believe you two did this," he said for the 100th time. This is the best gift anyone has ever given me." Work on the plane became their new family routine. Every evening after dinner, all three of them would head to the garage. Robert would explain what each part did, while Marcus took detailed notes and Emma sketched the restoration process. Weekends were dedicated entirely to the project. They stripped paint, cleaned parts, and slowly began to understand just how much work lay ahead of them. 3 months into the restoration, they were working on the interior when Emma made the discovery that changed everything. She was cleaning out the storage compartment behind the pilot's seat when her fingers found something that didn't belong. "There's something stuck back here," she called out, reaching deeper into the narrow space. "Probably just old paperwork," Robert said, not looking up from the engine he was rebuilding. But when Emma finally worked the object free, it wasn't paperwork at all. It was a small metal box, about the size of a hardcover book, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with tape that had somehow survived decades. "Dad, Marcus, you need to see this." The three of them stared at the mysterious package. Robert carefully removed the tape and unwrapped the oilcloth, revealing a military-style ammunition box. Inside, protected by layers of plastic, were dozens of envelopes tied with string, a leather journal, and several small cloth bags that jingled softly. The first envelope they opened was addressed to whoever finds this, in careful handwriting. The letter inside was dated 1953 and signed by Captain James Morrison. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back from my last mission. This plane served me well during the war, and I hid these letters and belongings before shipping out to Korea. I never got the chance to deliver them to my family. If someone finds this, please know that these represent the most important things in my life." Robert's hands shook slightly as he read the letter aloud. Inside the box were love letters to a woman named Sarah, photographs of a young couple, and letters from Morrison's parents and siblings. But it was the cloth bags that made them all gasp. The bags contained coins. Not just any coins, but rare silver dollars, mercury dimes, and other currency from the 1940s and early 1950s. There had to be hundreds of them, all in pristine condition. "Oh my God," Marcus whispered. "Dad, do you think these are worth something?" Robert was already examining one of the silver dollars with a magnifying glass. His accounting background had taught him enough about collectibles to recognize value when he saw it. "Emma, hand me my laptop. We need to research this." What they discovered over the next few hours left them speechless. The coins alone were worth more than $50,000. But that wasn't even the most valuable part of their find. In the bottom of the box, wrapped in a small velvet cloth, was a Purple Heart medal and several military commendations. As they researched Captain Morrison, they learned his story. He had been reported missing in action during a reconnaissance mission over North Korea in 1953. His plane had been shot down, and his body was never recovered. He had no children, and his wife Sarah had remarried years later, eventually passing away in the 1990s. "We have to find his family," Emma said, studying a photograph of Morrison and Sarah on their wedding day. "Someone should know what happened to him." The search took weeks. They contacted veterans organizations, genealogy websites, and military historians. Finally, they found her, Morrison's great-niece, Linda Patterson, who lived just 3 states away. She was a teacher, recently retired, and had been researching her family history. When Robert called Linda and explained what they had found, she broke down crying. "I never knew about Uncle James," she said through her tears. "My grandmother was his sister, but she never talked much about him. She just said he died in the war, and it was too painful to discuss." Linda drove out the following weekend to meet them. She was a small woman in her 60s with kind eyes and Morrison's same careful handwriting. When she saw the letters and photographs, she sobbed. "This is my great-grandmother," she said, pointing to a woman in one of the old photos. "And this must be great-grandfather Morrison. I have a photo just like this one at home, but I never knew who the young man in uniform was." Linda insisted that Robert, Marcus, and Emma keep the coins. Uncle James would want them to go to the people who found his story and honored his memory, she said. Besides, you've given me something much more valuable than money. You've given me my family's history. But she did ask for one thing. She wanted to take the letters and personal items to share with other family members who might remember Morrison's sisters and parents. And she wanted to arrange for Morrison's medals to be properly displayed at the local Veterans Museum. The coins weren't the end of their good fortune. News of their discovery spread through the vintage aviation community. A local news station did a story about the adopted children who bought their father a plane and found a treasure. The story was picked up by national outlets, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the Chun family and their remarkable discovery. But the real treasure wasn't the money, though it certainly helped. Robert was finally able to quit his stressful accounting job and open the aircraft restoration business he had always dreamed of. Marcus enrolled in aviation school, working toward his commercial pilot's license. Emma started college, majoring in art history with a focus on military memorabilia. More importantly, their story inspired other families. They received hundreds of letters from people sharing their own family histories, adoption stories, and discoveries. The local adoption agency where Robert had found Marcus and Emma asked them to speak at events, encouraging other potential parents to consider adoption. The plane, which they eventually named Sarah's Dream in honor of Morrison's wife, was fully restored 18 months later. Robert had decided to keep her rather than sell her, and on weekends, the family would take turns flying around their small city. Marcus became an excellent pilot, and even Emma learned to fly, though she preferred having her feet on the ground. The first time they took Sarah's Dream up together as a family, Robert looked down at the city where he had raised his children and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. 20 years earlier, he had been a lonely bachelor with no family. Now he was surrounded by love, pursuing his dream job, and had more money than he had ever imagined possible. "Dad," Emma said through the headset as they circled over their neighborhood. "Can you see our house from up here?" Robert smiled, looking down at the small apartment where they had spent so many happy years. Soon they would be moving to a bigger place with a proper hangar for the plane and workshop space for Robert's new business. But that little apartment would always be home in his heart. "I can see it," he replied. "I can see everything." The greatest treasure they had found wasn't hidden in an old airplane. It was the love of a family that had chosen each other, worked together, and supported each other's dreams. Captain Morrison's hidden box had given them financial security and an incredible story to tell. But the real magic had happened years earlier, when a quiet accountant decided to adopt 2 children who needed a home, and when those children grew up to honor the man who had given them everything. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones we don't even know we're giving. Morrison never knew that hiding his belongings in that plane would someday help a struggling family achieve their dreams. Robert never knew that adopting 2 children would lead to the greatest adventure of his life. And Marcus and Emma never knew that buying their dad a broken airplane for Father's Day would uncover a story that would touch thousands of lives. As they flew Sarah's Dream through the clear afternoon sky, 3 voices came through the radio, telling each other stories and planning their next adventure together. Below them, the world stretched out in all directions, full of possibilities they never could have imagined when they first walked into that dusty hangar and fell in love with a broken airplane that just needed someone to believe in her again. You.